Hello, and we are going through Francis Bacon's New Organum, Novum Organum, his attempt to replace the old, his attempt to invent modern science, if you speak of it retroactively. Go back and watch earlier videos if you want more backstory. We're talking about the idols of the mind, and now we get to where Bacon's going to go over all of them again, but more slowly and with more of his own examples. Idols of the tribe, cave, market, and theater. Provisionally, I'll allow one more video for each category. Idols of the tribe. These are those errors in reasoning, or those bad patterns or habits of thought, or those bad rules for thinking that afflict all human beings. Now, Bacon says about these errors, the human understanding, from its peculiar nature, easily supposes a greater degree of order and equality in things than it really finds. And although many things in nature be sui generis, i.e. in a category by themselves, and most irregular will yet admit parallels and conjugates and relatives where no such thing is. And here he's going to give a great example. Hence the fiction that all celestial bodies move in perfect circles, thus rejecting entirely spiral and serpentine lines except as explanatory terms. Now, this is a great example. If you go back to the history of astronomy, you'll find that a lot of people thought that all the heavenly bodies must move in perfect circles. But when they track the motions of planets and stars and moons, they find things are not actually moving in perfect circles. And it took a very, very long time, many centuries, for people to explain this. And Bacon says that the idea that things move in perfect circles is used to correct, or used to interpret, allegedly to correct, but actually to misinterpret our experience. We observe, we make some observations, we conclude that heavenly bodies move in perfect circles, and then we use that assumption to interpret all our subsequent experience, and even to deny the plain data of experience that indicates actually they're not moving in perfect circles. So that's where Bacon connects to a critique of the history of science, but also let's make sure we understand what he's doing with respect to the idols of the tribe. One of the idols of the tribe is to suppose that things have a greater degree of order and equality, and that our first impressions of order and equality are correct, and then we use that to misinterpret all subsequent experience of things that don't have such order and equality. All right, that's one example of the idols of the tribe. Let's see what else we can find. The human understanding, when any proposition has been once laid down, either from general admission and belief or from the pleasure it affords, forces everything else to add fresh support and confirmation, and although most cogent and abundant instances may exist to the contrary, yet either does not observe or despises them, or gets rid of and rejects them by some distinction with violent and injurious prejudice, rather than sacrifice the authority of its first conclusions. So we come to a conclusion, maybe because it pleases us to think it, or maybe because of general admission and belief, everyone else seems to think this, or maybe just because it seems the rational conclusion based on, going back to Bacon's critique of Aristotelianism, based on some simple observations of the world. We come to a conclusion about how the world works, and then we stick with that conclusion no matter what, and the human understanding forces everything else to add fresh support and confirmation to a conclusion we've once settled on. This connects to things like Thomas Kuhn talking about paradigms, although it's not nearly quite so subtle and sophisticated a commentary as Kuhn. It's not the same thing, it just has some connections. Simpler connection would just be the idea of confirmation bias. He's talking about confirmation bias. Bacon is explaining that confirmation bias is endemic to humanity. We take a conclusion and we stick with it no matter what future evidence may bring up. It was well answered by him who was shown in the temple, the votive tablet suspended by such as had escaped the peril of shipwreck, and was pressed as to whether he would then recognize the power of the gods by an inquiry, but where are the portraits of those who have perished in spite of their vows? I think this is a story in Cicero, and of course people like Bacon read Cicero. All right, so someone was shown in a temple, some things left there by someone who had prayed to the gods and then escaped from shipwreck. You look at this and you think, so prayer to these gods will actually help, and these gods will save us from shipwreck. The gods exist and will help us if we pray to them and make sacrifices to them. But the response was, what about the people who prayed and made sacrifices and then drowned in a shipwreck? We get to hear from them. And Bacon says, all superstition is much the same, whether it be that of astrology, dreams, omens, retributive judgment, or the like, in which all the deluded believers observe events which are fulfilled, but neglect and pass over their failure, though it be much more common. So, astrology. A prediction of an astrologer might come true. And one of the idols of the mind, one of the idols of the tribe specifically, is that we tend to jump on that sort of evidence and then stick with it, and then not notice or make up excuses for what happens when the prediction of an astrologer does not come true. But the same thing happens not just in astrology, but in science. These things happen. This confirmation bias and these sorts of mistakes are endemic to humanity, so be careful. This evil insinuates itself still more craftily in philosophy and the sciences, says Bacon. All right, let's wrap this up, and let me just give one example where he's going to be critiquing Plato. The human understanding is, by its own nature, prone to abstraction and supposes that which is fluctuating to be fixed. But it is better to dissect than abstract nature. It is better to dissect nature than to abstract from nature. I don't want to go over all the backstory here and talk about Plato's theory of forms in any kind of detail, but let me at least explain dissect rather than abstract. To abstract from nature is to take specific things and then in your mind go to some bigger idea built off of those things. It's better to not go up, but to go down, to take the things and take them apart and see how they work from the ground up, rather than come up with ideas of how things work from the top down, so to speak, by coming up with in your mind some higher thing that explains these. And Plato did that. I'm not going to stop and go over Plato's theory of forms, though. But he's disagreeing with that. It's better to dissect than to abstract from nature. Such was the method employed by the school of Democritus, the ancient philosopher who believed in atoms, which made greater progress in penetrating nature than the rest. It is best to consider matter, its conformation, and the changes of that conformation, its own action, and the law of this action or motion, for forms are a mere fiction of the human mind, unless you will call the laws of action by that name. Now, there's a huge topic there about whether the laws of physics themselves could be categorized as forms or universals, but I'm not going to pause and explain what all those terms even mean. What I will say is Plato talked about something called the forms, and Bacon is disagreeing with Plato. Maybe one brief clarifying remark on that after this last paragraph from Bacon, before we stop reading him for this video. Such are the idols of the tribe, which arise either from the uniformity of the constitution of man's spirit, or its prejudices, or its limited faculties, or restless agitation, or from the interference of the passions, or the incompetence of the senses, or the mode of their impressions. That's a nice list there of the types of ways we go astray with the idols of the tribe. The sort of things endemic to humanity that make us confused. Now, let's see if I've said as much as I can, or at any rate can in this short video, say about the forms. The human mind tends to do that abstraction thing rather than that dissection thing. We tend to start with some observations like, here's a pen, here's a pen, here's a pen. They're all pens. Three different things, and they have something in common. And then try to come up with some explanation for how that works by going upwards to some idea of non-physical penness or something, the Platonic way of thinking. That is one way we tend to go astray. We're prone to abstraction. We have a tendency to explain things by abstraction, but it just won't work. And that's another example he gives of an idol of the tribe. Plato's forms is an idol of the tribe. All right, that's quite enough of this. We'll probably do some idols of the cave in the next video. Thank you for watching.